Between 1908 and 1940, Sears sold over 70,000 homes through the mail. None of them required a down payment, a mortgage broker, or even a face-to-face meeting. The system was so efficient that it became invisible. A family in rural Nebraska could flip through a catalog on a Tuesday, order a complete house by Wednesday, and have materials arrive by rail within weeks. The house cost between $1,500 and $6,000, roughly $25,000 to $100,000 in today's money. But here's what made this genuinely radical. Sears financed it. The company didn't just sell kits, it became a bank. To understand why this mattered, you have to see what homeownership looked like before. In 1900, most Americans rented. If you owned land, you either inherited it or paid cash, a sum most laborers would never accumulate in a lifetime. Mortgages existed, but they were brutal. 5-year balloons, 50% down payments, interest rates that fluctuated. Banks didn't trust working people with 30-year loans. Exhibit 1, Sears recognized a feedback loop. If workers owned homes, they'd buy more stuff to furnish them. Refrigerators, stoves, tools, wallpaper. Sears sold all of it, so the company had a structural incentive to make homeownership accessible in a way banks simply didn't. It was predatory capitalism wearing a friendly mask, but the mask worked. The kit homes themselves were engineered with assembly line precision. A house arrived in numbered packages. Walls came pre-cut. Doors and windows fit exact dimensions. Nails, screws, and hardware arrived in labeled bags. The instructions were so detailed that a semi-skilled worker, or a determined homeowner, could assemble a house without hiring expensive contractors. Exhibit 2, Quality Control. Sears staked its reputation on these homes. They had to withstand decades of use, so the company sourced materials carefully, tested designs, and stood behind warranties. A kit home was more reliable than a home built by a local contractor who might cut corners and disappear. That reliability created trust in a market built on suspicion. Between 1908 and 1940, Sears sold approximately 70,000 to 100,000 kit homes. That's not a rounding error. That's roughly 5 to 10% of all single-family homes built during that period. In some neighborhoods, particularly in Chicago, the Midwest, and the Pacific Northwest, Sears homes became the dominant housing stock. You could walk an entire block and see nearly identical homes, each one a tiny piece of the company's real estate empire. The financing mechanism is where the system became a closed loop. Sears didn't just deliver a house, it held the mortgage. Customers paid Sears directly month after month. The company collected interest. If you defaulted, Sears repossessed the house and resold it. This wasn't altruism. It was a profit machine disguised as homeownership. Exhibit 3, the suburban sprawl this created was predictable. When homeownership becomes cheap and accessible, people move away from crowded cities to cheaper land on the periphery. That's basic economics. Sears kit homes didn't cause suburban expansion, but they accelerated it dramatically. The company essentially industrialized the suburbs before suburbs even had a name. But here's where the story darkens. The entire system depended on two things: stable employment and stable real estate values. In 1929, both collapsed. The Great Depression wiped out incomes. Property values plummeted. Suddenly, Sears' mortgage portfolio became toxic. Customers couldn't pay. The company couldn't repossess homes, nobody wanted to buy them. Sears was holding billions in bad debt. The company had built a system that worked perfectly in good times and catastrophically in bad ones. There was no circuit breaker, no risk management layer. Sears had bet its entire balance sheet that economic growth would never stop. When it did, the collapse was inevitable. By 1933, Sears had to forgive or restructure thousands of mortgages just to avoid complete insolvency. Exhibit 4, what Sears failed to predict was that the kit home business model had an expiration date. Once suburbs existed and infrastructure was in place, traditional construction became competitive again. Builders emerged who specialized in mass-market homes. Banks loosened lending standards. The Depression forced Sears to exit the mortgage business almost entirely. By 1950, the kit home program was winding down. What's remarkable is that Sears saw the end coming. Company leadership understood that the competitive advantage was eroding. Rather than fight, Sears pivoted. It stopped selling homes and doubled down on selling stuff to the people already living in them. Appliances, tools, clothing. The company that built the suburbs shifted to profiting from suburban consumption. This pivot worked for decades. Sears became the dominant retailer in American suburbs. the place where families bought everything from kitchen sinks to lawn mowers. The company that once built the physical infrastructure of suburban life now owned its commercial heart. The system had evolved, but the logic remained the same. Extract profit from the aspirations of working Americans, but the real lesson isn't about Sears or kit homes, it's about how systems fail. Sears built something genuinely innovative, a closed-loop financial and manufacturing machine that democratized homeownership. The system worked until the assumptions it was built on broke. When that happened, collapse wasn't a surprise. It was baked in from the beginning. That's what risk analysts look for, systems that appear robust until they are not. Sears' kit home business was exactly that. It looked brilliant in 1925. It looked catastrophic in 1933. The difference wasn't a change in the business model. It was a change in the environment, and the model had no flexibility to adapt. Today, those Sears kit homes still stand. Thousands of them. They're often invisible, just ordinary houses in ordinary neighborhoods. But if you know where to look, you can see the fingerprints of that system. The standardized dimensions, the pre-cut materials, the way entire blocks look almost identical. They are monuments to a moment when one company believed it could engineer its way to both profit and social progress. It couldn't, and that's the unsolved tension that runs through this entire story. Sears genuinely made homeownership possible for millions of people who couldn't afford it otherwise. It also built a system that was structurally fragile, that prioritized growth over resilience, and that transferred risk from the company to the customer. Both things are true at the same time. The Sears kit home wasn't a failure. It was a system that worked exactly as designed until the world changed. And then it failed exactly as designed too. Understanding that difference between a flawed system and a system that's merely vulnerable to disruption is how you start to see the hidden architecture of the world around you. This video is for educational and informational purposes only and is not financial advice. Always do your own research. Subscribe for more deep dives into the economic systems that shaped how we live and why they eventually break. This video is for educational and informational purposes only and is not financial advice. Always do your own research.